looked me in the eye and said 3 words that I never, ever thought I'd hear again.
One more match.
Are you ready?
Oh, well, that works too.
D-Generation X is ready. Kane, Undertaker, Brothers of Destruction. I say this with absolutely no respect at all. If you're not down with that, we got 2 words for ya.
Break it down.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, episode 29 on the air, coming to you from CSP Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And as you just heard, Shawn Michaels, well, maybe not, and it was in the exact words specifically, but yeah, he is coming out of retirement after 8 long years, 8 years, few months, give or take, but Heartbreak Kid is back in the building, and he will team up with Triple H, reforming D-Generation X, taking on the Brothers of Destruction, Kane and The Undertaker at WWE Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia. Now, we are expecting a response of sorts this coming Monday night on Raw from Kane and The Undertaker. More than likely, we'll accept the challenge. I mean, let's face it, even though they put up graphs up already on social media and on their websites promoting the match. And it's funny that way, especially since day one that I've been watching pro wrestling. It doesn't matter which organization. Somebody challenges someone else, doesn't really go through the channels, at least we don't see them on television, and the match is set. And we will hear about a week or so later from the opponent saying that he accepts the challenge, but it's already been advertised and promoting, not to mention that the graphs and all of the posters and whatnot are already been out there. So what is there to accept? The business sometimes can be a funny one. If it's not always a work, then at least it can be funny. But anyway, I'm going to try something. Well, did my meter just jump up? Yeah, that flashed red for a second. I apologize if that hurt your ears. But I'm going to try something a little different here, where instead of just running down the entire, results, I guess in a way they are results, but I'm just going to point out all the highlights, say, of Raw, Smackdown, NXT, and 205 Live, for example. Just trying something a little bit new here, adding to my repertoire, if you will. Not so much to make this show a little longer. It doesn't need to be any more than an hour. I know sometimes I can go nearly 2 hours, but that's because sometimes so many things can happen. Or if I choose, depending what's going on the weekend before, I would have a separate pay-per-view review on a different audio clip or video on my YouTube channel specifically. But in this case, I did have a chance to do that this past weekend with Super Showdown, which I'll have the results here in a bit. But also, again, highlights of the aftermath, if you will, or the backlash. I know those are pretty cool pay-per-view names. This week, Raw and SmackDown in particular. And, of course, I'm throwing in there NXT and 205 Live, which I picked a hell of a week to start doing this as a bit of an experiment here, because both shows of NXT and 205 Live had very interesting highlights, if you will. So let's get right into it. So as mentioned, DX has gone back together. Now, actually a couple of things before they even get to Saudi Arabia. There's a couple of things going on. One in particular that's been out there in the news, whether it may or may not affect WWE. Honestly, I don't see how it could, other than some, I guess the term would be can't do business with you right now kind of thing, I guess, even though everything was already set in stone months, if not a year or two before any of this took place. But first things first, and we know, as many of you do, Saudi Arabia is in a different part of the world. very different from the United States as far as their tradition goes, as far as their way of life is. And that was shown pretty much back in Greatest Royal Rumble, where it was already ahead of time established that women cannot be allowed to participate. And there was some backlash after the video that was shown in between segments, and it was promoting an upcoming pay-per-view. And in the video, there were highlights of women in the ring performing, and obviously they were in their ring attire. And that was a big no-no. That could not have been shown, much less seen, in the stadium that they were in on their big monitors. And there was some backlash, and they apologized, they being WWE, pronouns, pal. And it's not a laughing matter if you're a Saudi Arabian citizen, and that's just how things are over there. You know, WWE was an invited guest. They will be again for Crown Jewel, and as such, you have to follow and abide to all the rules and regulations and respect them, because especially if you want to do business again in the future, whenever the current multi-year contract expires, some believe it's up to anywhere from 3 to 5 years. You want to establish that working relationship in Saudi Arabia. So why bring this up now? I'm not sure. I'm no expert. Obviously, I'm no social studies teacher. I'm no history buff, although I do enjoy and like to read up on history on occasion, especially on world-changing events. But this was a conversation I had with a buddy of mine, Adamus Prime, and we both agree that it may not be a good idea for Shawn Michaels and Triple H to appear at Crown Jewel as D-Generation X, maybe as the Click, but DX, with their suggestive mannerisms, if you will, I'm not sure things like that can fly over there. Again, I'm pretty sure all of this was established and arranged ahead of time, so maybe it's okay. I don't want to be, a Debbie Downer where I don't want to see DX anymore at this point in time or on their point of their careers. I'm not saying that. I'm just like everyone else, excited to see Shawn Michaels back. That may or may not be more than just a one-off match. But I'm just wondering about that. Is that okay? I mean, who am I to criticize DX, especially the original incarnation of Shawn and Triple H and China and Ravishing Rick Rude? All the stuff that they did back then, they definitely cannot get away with now, much less in a different part of the world. And I was a fan. I follow them. I had their T-shirts, their stickers, and whatever at the time was available before social media was a thing. And I'm still a fan, no doubt about it. I'm not going to deny that. But obviously things have changed. We've all hopefully have grown up a little bit. So even though we enjoy the things we loved as we were younger back then, we can still now. But sometimes gotta just pump the brakes a little bit and say, oh, wait, can this still be accepted today? Maybe the younglings, the new fans of the new millennium can also pick up on this as well and ask the same questions. But at the end of the day, they're going to still be excited. They're still going to be following what the trend is, as most of us do, and just go with it. But I'm just curious. That's all. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm not saying they can't do it. But maybe, and I'm going to just leave it there, somewhere in the middle, until someone can maybe show me otherwise or explain to me that it can be okay or could be okay for the crotch chops and the suck it chants. And I'm pretty sure it will be okay once they get out there in the middle of the ring and they do the opening shtick that DX does and ask the crowd, are you ready? I got 2 words for you. And if they say it, then, well, there's probably the entire stadium has to be punished for such an act. But at that point, I guess I'll be all right. But between now and then, it's going to be a lot of anticipation to see what happens. But just like everyone else, I'm all but excited to see Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement, stepping into the ring. teaming up with Triple H, Kane and Undertaker. And this goes even probably in the same, I guess, the same frame of mind or the way of thinking where the greatest Royal Rumble, when it came time to see who was going to participate in all 50 spots, Saudi Prince, which I forgot his name, I don't have it written down here, I apologize for that, but apparently between the Prince and other associates of his, when suggesting a few names, and I mentioned this before here on the JM Report, that names like Yokozuna and Ultimate Warrior were thrown around. Somehow they were not aware that these men, Hall of Famers, have passed away a few years ago and were just completely unaware of this. So obviously they're still fans, or they are fans, I should say, of the old World Wrestling Federation days. I am too. I'll sometimes find myself flipping through the network and pop in an old WWF pay-per-view from the 90s or early 2000s, and pretty much before they got the F out. That's not to say that there weren't great stuff during WWE times. They were, but that'll be another long story for some other time. So, point being, wouldn't surprise me if that was again the frame of mind here. Like, well, let's bring back some of these old timers that can still go. That being Kane, Taker, Triple H. I can only imagine during the talks for Greatest Royal Rumble, Shawn Michaels' name might have came up, and someone from WWE, let's say Vince, like, well, you see, pal, the thing is he's retired, and he swore to stick by it and be the only one not to come out of retirement and this and that. Well, here's a case full of $2 million says that he'll come out of retirement. I'm not saying, and I believe I said this before as well, I'm not saying it's all about the money. Shawn is not suffering, if you will, financially. Obviously, I mean, he's happy. He has his way of life. He has his family to look out for and take care of. Everyone's doing well. And hey, if you're doing well, who says you can't do better, right? And that $2 million number is just a guesstimation, because a lot of money in the millions were thrown around to make this deal go through. And some of the wrestlers individually, or pairings in this case, will get paid a nice little purse. And in Shawn Michaels' case, it was rumored to be quite up there, between $1 and $2 million. If you're a Dave Meltzer fan, you know what I'm talking about. Who's going to judge that? You know what I mean? Who's going to say, really, $2 million is the best thing you can do? No, this is Shawn Michaels we're talking about. He's obviously stayed in tremendous shape. He's gotten into better shape leading into Crown Jewel. And I think he'll pull off a very memorable performance and a great match at that, whether it is Kane or Undertaker one-on-one or in a tag match in this case. And very, very exciting to look forward to. The other story in relations to this, or may not, depending on your point of view, and again, you let me know, because I honestly don't see why it should, but since it's a big deal, and well, let me get into the story, and again, you decide if Crown Jewel will be in jeopardy at this point. So let me explain. There was a Saudi journalist by the name of Jamal Khashoggi, or Khashoggi. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. I'm not trying to be funny at this time. This is a very, very serious story here, and I'm sure many of you have heard or seen this week in the news that said Saudi journalist, who has been critical of the Saudi regime, has gone missing for over a week now. And it is believed by Turkish officials to have been killed while he was at the consulate. Now, a U.S. official says that the United States has intercepts of Saudi officials discussing the matter of luring the journalist into the consulate. Jamal is a columnist for the Washington Post, and the U.S. official has no solid evidence that the journalist is alive or dead. Now, this is where Wade Keller steps in and chimes in on what he believes is going on, and from what he was able to gather. Wade Kelder, by the way, is the editor of the Pro Wrestling Torch. He made note that one of the congressmen to condemn any relationships with Saudi Arabia, if the allegations are true, is Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, which happens to be the home state of the WWE. But for now, let's look at that as a coincidence. And proposes, Senator Murphy does, that this may end up being troublesome for WWE's deal event with Saudi Arabia. Now, U.S. Senate candidate from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, he will go on to Twitter and add, if this is true, that the Saudis lured a U.S. resident into their consulate and murdered him, it should represent a fundamental break in our relationship with Saudi Arabia. Okay, first of all, if this is all true, right now there's all speculation and accusations. There was a brief report on World News Tonight a couple of days ago, and they were showing video surveillance of the man, the said journalist, walking into the building where his fiance was sitting outside in the car waiting for him for hours and never came out. And of course, there were surveillance cameras set in the back of the building, but weren't working the day of. Conveniently, coincidence, you decide for yourselves. And then I believe it was the very next day when this was brought to light, the situation that the journalist never came out of the building. Other journalists from the local journalists from the area were invited into the building and pretty much shown with cameras recording, shown around the building, in and out of offices, opening closets and cabinets to show that he's not in here. He's not here. He's not in the building. So unless you want to go by Mission Impossible or James Bond logic, and that he had a hood thrown over his head and pushed into a van with no rear or side windows, or a very dark tinted window Cadillac and driven off somewhere. I mean, who knows? That's just me speculating as much as everyone else is here. But the belief of being, when in the words of Senator Murphy from Connecticut, that it should represent a fundamental break. If this is all true, not only should it represent, it has to. Now, I'm not one here to throw a monkey wrench in anyone's programming here or machine, but this is a real serious accusations. It's going to affect a lot of people, and I understand the working relationship in businesses and practices between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. This will be a very, very big deal, and I can only imagine what will be the consequences, if any, if all of this is proven true. As far as the WWE goes, they put out a very, and I mean very brief statement in regards to all this. And they put it in 4 simple words. Currently monitoring the situation. I'm taking that with a grain of salt because, for one, I really seriously doubt that they will pull the event from Crown Jewel or Saudi Arabia with the event of Crown Jewel and lose out on so much money. And second thought of mine would be that they can postpone all of this until much, much later, when all of this is resolved and finding out the exact results of all this and finding out the whereabouts, I should say, of the Saudi journalist who was gone missing ever since stepping into the consulate. So, again, this is a very serious situation. No, I want to believe he's okay. I want to believe he's still with us. And hopefully he's being well taken care of and not being tortured, and that he can rejoin us pretty soon and explain what happened. And it's very difficult. Well, first of all, being a journalist is very dangerous, and it can be. And if you're critical about, basically, in this case, your own countrymen, about the regime and how things are going on, maybe, again, I don't know all the details. I don't have all the facts in front of me. Maybe they don't have freedom of speech like we do out here in the States, and that could be used against you. Hell, even freedom of speech can be used against you in a court of law, especially if you say something the wrong way. But if your defense is freedom of speech, like, well, can you prove that you didn't mean to say or follow up what you said? Very difficult. So I just want to move on here. Just want to make everyone aware of what's been going on. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but hopefully everything will work out. And as far as WWE is concerned, they can move forward with Crown Jewel, and there are many more expected events in Saudi Arabia in the near future. So other highlights from Raw, besides the reformation of the Generation X, the Bellas finally putting the wheels in motion and making the rumors true of a upcoming match at Evolution between Ronda Rousey and Nikki Bella for the Raw Women's Championship during a rematch of Super Showdown on Monday Night Raw, the 6-woman tag of the the Bella Twins, I should say, teaming up with Ronda Rousey, taking on all members of the Riot Squad. Towards the end here, let's just skip right into it. Ronda Rousey was just about to place her armbar submission on Ruby Riott. She's looking around. Everyone else was knocked out of the ring and skirmished all over the place. So you have Liv Morgan, from looking, because the hard camera shot was on screen. So in the foreground, you have Liv Morgan intercepted by Nikki Bella from getting back into the ring to prevent the armbar on Ruby Riott. And in the background, you already see Brie Bella kind of poking her head up from the apron, and enter Sarah Logan, who was already in the ring, literally trips herself. And that caused Nikki Bella to drag her out of the ring, and Ronda applying the submission and to get the win for the match. So not necessarily a botch, I would say. I know some will. It was just a missed spot or a forgotten spot by Brie Bella, where the idea was the two remaining members of the Riot Squad would try to run back into the ring to save Ruby, but the Bella Twins would intercept them once they got close enough on the apron or in the ring, in the case of Sarah Logan, and just get them right out of the ring so Ronda can win the match. So Nikki missed her cue, missed her spot. She was already there, but looking back a couple of times, because I know a lot of us do that, especially if you're a Brie Bella fan, to see exactly what went wrong. She was there. She was there on time. If anything, slightly a little early. But even so, whether you're just too early or just got ahead of yourself a little bit, Sarah Logan was in front of Brie Bella the entire time. And Sarah Logan, knowing what to do, I mean, she tried to reach with her heel back towards Brie. I'm like, here, take it, trip me. But she just tripped herself. And it's bad enough that the whole thing was caught on camera on a live shot. And just to go with it anyway. And I don't know. But the miscues and mishaps of Brie Bella continue. I know it takes both, but at least Sarah was trying of the two more harder than the other. And it is what it is. And apparently Daniel Bryan, as a man and a husband, went on social media to defend his wife, which he should, which any man should in this case. And Brie Bella doesn't really have to explain herself any more than she already has. And I understand things happen, or in some cases accidents happen, shit happens. I get that. You know, I have it done to me, and unfortunately I had it done to others. At no point was it ever intentional, just like in the case of Brie Bella a few weeks ago to Liv Morgan. I get that. And I still cannot figure out the frame of mind that Brie Bella was in right before and after she gave that second kick. That's the one thing I can never defend. She has yet to point that out. But back to Daniel Bryan, and he said all the right things. He didn't say anything wrong. He didn't come out as a douchebag. just try to set things right and make peace with everybody. I mean, as merely as impossible as it is, it's also a nice gesture. But they made it sound like as if this was cyberbullying. It's not. I think they missed the whole concept of cyberbullying just because a few hundred, let's say, maybe more fans got into social media and started bashing Brie Bella after those kicks to Liv Morgan's face, and said what they had to say about, she should go back to the performance center. She should not be in a ring. She's a liability. She's hurting people. She's hurt herself. All logical and arguable conversations to have, but this cyberbullying, my understanding, is just any low-life individual jumping onto social media and randomly start picking on a person that they know, a person that they've come in contact with, whether they go to school or work together, and start putting out these negative comments to a point where, and it's happened unfortunately, where people take their own lives because no one was helping them. I'm not saying that's what's going to lead to. I'm not saying this is where it's going. But there's a difference where the haters, let's call them, have been bashing on Brie because we saw what she did. Cyberbullies have no rhyme or reason, not even logic, just to start picking fights with anyone and say, you should do this to yourself, you should do that to yourself, your family must not love you, and this and that. That's cyberbullying. I never took my comments any further that not defending Brie Bella after the second kick because, again, I don't know what the frame of mind she was in. And I would have loved to have been a fly in the room to see or hear that conversation between herself and Liv Morgan after the fact. But this is not cyberbullying. Not at all. It's a huge difference, different playing field. And it's just other people being expressive. I know the only best thing that could be done about this is just block all these people that been saying all these bad things about Brie Bella. And she, obviously, for now, it seems she's doing fine. She's still in the ring. She's still promoting her show on E. She's got to be a very integral part of her sister going into Evolution against Ronda Rousey for the women's title, or the Raw women's title. So there are still things to come with the Bella twins. Where exactly do they go? Who knows? But after Evolution, I think things will settle down in the women's division a little bit. Hopefully set up a nice 5-women tag for Survivor Series, the elimination tag that is, and see where things go. And if you didn't have a reason to hate the Bellas before all this, and particularly Brie, we can add Nikki into that too, because after the match, to set things in motion for the upcoming match at Evolution, the Bella Twins attack Ronda Rousey, beat her down to a pulp. Ronda tried to make a couple of comebacks, but only to be outnumbered once again, to a point where Ronda just looked up with a real sad look on her face, asking why did you do this? And they went off, not off the air, but they went to commercial after the beatdown. And apparently during the break, and it was shown on their Facebook page that Natalya came running down to save what was left of Ronda. My question was, where the hell were you doing all this was going on? But it is what it is, and it's interesting. Before the attack happened, that Ronda Rousey is scheduled to defend her title, but yet to be a named opponent or challenger. And now we got one. It didn't take too long. So now we have reasons to hate the Bella Twins again because they're heels. So enjoy internet, enjoy social media, and I guess all the haters out there, because if they haven't already, they're sure as hell putting on a lot of hate comments out there. Kurt Angle made a surprise return, but not quite as you think, as we've seen previously, because acting general manager Baron Corbin was the first to announce of the upcoming qualifying matches for the WWE Crown Jewel World Cup tournament to determine the best in the world. Someone get CM Punk's lawyer ready. So Baron Corbin wanted to qualify himself into a match, but not just place himself in any kind of match because he's acting general manager. He wanted to earn his opportunity. So he put together what was about maybe 8 to 9 participants, including himself, for a battle royal, or particularly a global battle royal, where I would presume, and I haven't seen anyone identify all these individuals, but I would presume we're all local talent from the Chicago area, and we're given basically, I guess the worst way to describe him is basic, typical, stereotypical gimmicks, from a Russian to I think it was a Swedish chef. Stereotypes. I think there was one from there was one from Mexico. There was the old conquistador, who if you haven't seen the original conquistadors, oh my goodness, they were amazing. I think one of the last matches I saw them in was Survivor Series 89. Was it 89? 89, I think it was. No, I'm sorry, possibly no, 88. 88 was that huge 10 versus 10 tag match. And they lasted toward the end there until the Powers of Pain finally got them eliminated. But there have been many incarnations of the Conquistadors throughout the years. Jericho, I know, played one. Edge and Christian played one. And this particular Conquistador either was left in the dry for too long, or they couldn't find the right size outfit for this match to wear, because it looked tight. I mean, couldn't help but to notice basically all of his joints were tying up on this outfit, and he looked stiff as a board. And so the match starts, everybody scrambles. They try to get Baron Corbin right away, but he breaks free. He eliminates quite a handful of wrestlers out of the ring, and others eliminated each other on the far side. So it came down to two, where the Conquistador was knocked out of the ring for a second, and it looked like Baron Corbin won the thing, but the bell never rang. So he's celebrating, at the same time looking around, why isn't the bell ringing? So in comes the Conquistador, and this is where I immediately realized what was going on. I noticed the shoes that the Conquistador was wearing, and they looked very, very familiar, and I said to myself, oh my God, if this is not Irish. And there was no time, absolutely no time, especially with all the lights on, where they could have done a switcheroo, which I think could have been just as good of as an angle, no pun intended. Had the Conquistador, when he was knocked out of the ring the first time, could have swapped places with someone else underneath the ring, on the other side, where the LED boards are not, those LED aprons or skirts, and make the switch and come back in fresh as the daisy and beat up on Baron Corbin, which the Conquistador did, performing a few familiar-looking suplexes, such as Germans and apparently an angle slam, and knocked him out of the ring. So that's when the bell rings, and the referees come in to raise the arms of the Conquistador, who now apparently has qualified to move on to the World Cup Championship, or tournament for the World Cup in Crown Jewel, and gives a bit of a stare down with Baron Corbin, who's still sitting ringside on the floor in disbelief, and slowly removes the mask. And to no one else's surprise at that point, it was Kurt Angle, who was said to be still on vacation, and was caught up with, I believe it was Carly Russo, backstage before he was leaving, and basically said, no, he's still on vacation. So took time off from his vacation to come in, win a Battle Royal to qualify for a World Cup spot in the greatest of all time, or whatever they're calling this World Cup. And I said this a few weeks ago when it was being suggested, if the WWE want to do such a thing where they want to do a World Cup, they have to include outside talent from different organizations, even if it's a one-off. And nope, they're doing it amongst themselves, similar to the Invasion angle. Of course, it's going to be an obvious winner and one of possibly obvious participants. So far, at this point, Kurt Angle is in. John Cena gets an automatic invitation, so he's in. No word exactly who their opponents will be, but we'll move on. When I get to SmackDown, mention other participants that will join them. Also, Lita made her return. She joined in Trish Stratus after Trish was conducting a promo and was interrupted by Alexa Bliss, her opponent at Evolution, and Mickie James, who was set to face Lita at Evolution. So there was a beatdown, and Lita came in for the save. And then afterwards, it was announced that Both separate one-on-one matches will now be a tag team match as Lita teams up with Trish Stratus, taking on Mickie James and Alexa Bliss. No word as to why exactly. Maybe there was a concern of lack of interest from separate matches, so let's just put them together. Or the fact that Alexa Bliss is still a little bit still healing from her sore arm. I mentioned also a couple of weeks ago, that Alexa was suffering from numbness as well from her left arm, I believe it is, and wasn't exactly clear to return to the ring, and she hasn't, even though she took part in this beatdown on Trish Stratus with Mickie James, but still hasn't had really a one-on-one match so far, and it wouldn't surprise me if she doesn't have one until Evolution, thus making having the tag team match now, giving most of the work to Mickie James and only have Alexa in the ring when necessary. I think it's a good idea to keep her safe, to still save the pay-per-view, still save the advertisement that Alexa and Trish will be there. So it's all for the sake of saving, for the sake of being safe, I should say. So hopefully Alexa Bliss will get better as well. And the other highlight of Raw was Dean Ambrose walked out on the Shield during another said rematch from Super Showdown. The Shield took on Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, and Dolph Ziggler. And at the end, someone keeps mentioning, I'll get back to you. Someone, I don't know who it is. So, after the match, only this time, the heels would win because the Shield were victorious at Super Showdown. Strowman, McIntyre, and Ziggler get the win. Afterwards, is that even a term? Afterwards, Ambrose just stepped out of the ring and walked to the back. And in an exclusive interview on Facebook, at least on WWE's Facebook page, Ambrose was asked what happened, what was that about, what's going on. He simply said that he doesn't get it anymore, and maybe he just doesn't fit in anymore. Doesn't fit in anywhere. Just walked off. He walked out the rampway there to the underground garage of the arena, and that was it. So eventually, there's going to be a Shield breakup, or maybe just giving the impression or the tease that one is coming, only for Ambrose to come to terms, or just realize that, all of this was just a misunderstanding and they are looking out for his best interest if given the opportunity and time and effort. But for now, Ambrose is in between a rock and a hard place. So hopefully some more light will be shed this coming Monday night on Raw. On SmackDown, in yet another rematch from Super Showdown, Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair wrestled for Becky's SmackDown Women's Championship. And this time, this led to a double countout. I realize I'm skipping over the actual Super Showdown card, but I'll try to make mention of the rest of the results here. Becky Lynch won by, she retained her title via disqualification, but Charlotte Flair still won the match at Super Showdown, where Becky Lynch used her title belt to whip on Charlotte while she had her in the figure eight, and just retained the belt. Trying to still do heelish things, but still not working. The audience is still behind Becky. So here we had a rematch on SmackDown. Becky just decided to do another walkaway. Charlotte wasn't having any of it. So this resulted in a double countout. But not before Charlotte Flair would, they called it a spear, but more of a tackle, really. But what's the difference, honestly? Charlotte would tackle Becky into the LED board on top of the rampway. They didn't break through. They just cracked and buckled a couple of panels there, and thus damaging that right smack in the middle of the LED screen of the entrance rampway there. So both women were out. A lot of officials came in to not only separate them, but evaluate what was going on, to see of their conditions. And it was later on in the evening that it was announced that they would have yet another rematch at Evolution, only this time Becky Lynch will defend her SmackDown Women's title against Charlotte Flair in a last women standing match. So no more excuses. Similar to AJ and Samoa Joe, also at Super Showdown, where AJ retained his title, making Samoa Joe submit, and in a no count out, no DQ, must be a winner match. This time in a last women standing match, very similar. In fact, I think there are the exact same rules other than the way to win. No DQ, no count out, no excuses, no submissions. You have to win by, as they say, incapacitate your opponent or just knock them down, beat the crap out of them until they can't get up before a 10 count and you win. In this case, you will win the women's Smackdown title. The returning Jeff Hardy. We last saw him in Hell in a Cell, a match against Randy Orton. Defeated Samoa Joe in a qualifying match for the World Cup at Crown Jewel. So Jeff Hardy advances. Samoa Joe can't catch a break. He can't win the title from the AJ Styles, 3 pay-per-views in a row. And can't seem to defeat Jeff Hardy here, who just came back off of hiatus. So Jeff Hardy advances. Should be interesting how he performs in Saudi Arabia. Also, Randy Orton will qualify for a World Cup spot when he defeated the returning Big Show. This week had a lot of returns in WWE, as Randy Orton will now move on to Crown Jewel. And it was announced for the first time ever, and I looked around, and from the results I've gathered so far, I couldn't find anything on YouTube, couldn't find anything through Google. So legit, first time ever, next week on Smackdown for their 1000th episode. United States champion Shinsuke Nakamura in a qualifying match for the World Cup will take on the returning Rey Mysterio. That on paper sounds amazing. People have been having orgasms ever since this was announced. Hopefully, they can pull it off on SmackDown next week, because it's been building up as a big deal now, as it should be, if it's their 1000th episode. Why shouldn't it be? But in a case like this, we're having a lot of returns as well, expected for SmackDown 1000. It's Shinsuke Nakamura and Rey Mysterio in the match. How can this not be? This is just as close as we're going to get as a Kenny Omega versus Pentagon at All In, if I can't make any better or clearer reference there. Someone I'm sure can do better, but for now, that's what I'm going with. Come on, WWE, give us this one at least. I mean, you came through with AJ Styles versus Finn Balor a couple of years ago. That was awesome. And you can't do it again with Shinsuke and Mysterio in this case. So that's all I got to say. NXT this week had my words cannot do this justice. They had a triple threat match for their North American Championship. Ricochet taking on Pete Dunne and Adam Cole. You got to watch this match. At the end, if you watch the match, I guess you'll already be spoiled here. But Ricochet does retain his championship. I think I'll run out of breath before I get done explaining. But either way, my words, as I said before, cannot do this match justice. You need to watch this match on NXT from this week. Ricochet, Pete Dunne, Adam Cole. Go watch it now, and then come back to me, of course. Keith Lee defeated some guy named Conor Reeves, but in the main event spot had NXT champion Tommaso Ciampa having a verbal exchange with the Velvet Team Dream, only to have Nikki Cross kind of interrupt, let's say. And, of course, both men were thrown for a loop, not knowing what Nikki was doing there. The crowd was amazing, by the way, the Full Sail crowd. Chanting Nikki knows a secret. Basically telling Velvet Team that she knows what he did. Didn't say what it was, and then turned to Ciampa and pretty much said the same thing. But when Ciampa was about to explain himself, Nikki just smacks the microphone out of his hand, and it's laying on the floor. And, I'll get back to you. I don't even know who you are, so, yeah. Nikki will smack the microphone out of Ciampa's hand, and the microphone's laying in the middle of the ring. And you see little unorthodox Nikki Cross as she is. She's so cute, by the way. Is with just smile and grin at the microphone, and we start speaking to it, and pretty much say like, "I know what you did too." I want to believe that's in reference to Tommaso Ciampa's had Ciampa not had his microphone smacked out of his hand. That's what Nikki Cross would have told him anyway. But people believe that. I think Nikki's telling the microphone knows what the microphone did. No. She's telling Ciampa that she knows what he did. Whatever it is, I guess we'll find out sooner or later. And that's how they went off the air. Curious to see exactly what they're talking about. Maybe in relation to Aleister Black, but I think that went. At least that was my frame of mind. But I think they went with a different direction with that, as I honestly haven't been catching up with NXT as of late. So my timeline could be off a little bit. But still a great show. I mean, especially after that triple threat match, how can you go wrong and not miss out on this week's episode of NXT? And 205 Live, I realize I'm out of order here. 205 Live saw Tony Nese defeat the former Cruiserweight champion Cedric Alexander. And during his match, Lince Dorado was attacked by the returning Mike Kanellis, who was accompanied by Maria. I mentioned last time that Maria was set to return after suffering a broken wrist during training at the Performance Center a few months ago. She's obviously been healed up and cleared to return. She didn't get physical, not that she needed to, but more provided distraction here for Lince, who was climbing to the top rope, only to climb down after realizing Maria was walking down the rampway, puzzled, and from behind get attacked by Mike Kanellis, who has been relegated up until now to dark matches. But he's been he's gotten into great shape. He's slimmed down a little bit. He's finally, I want to believe that he's finally conquered his demons, and or at least has control over them, and is able to do what he loves to do, and that's being in the ring. And hopefully 205 will be a good fit for him before, if he's ever considered to go back to the main roster. I believe he was last seen on Smackdown. And that's when and where his problems came to surface, and was recommended or suggested that he step away for the time being to get his stuff together. And thankfully he did. So that was your highlights this week on Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and 205 Live. As of right now, the Evolution card stands as is. Ronda Rousey taking on Nikki Bella, which more than likely, so far, from my understanding, it will be the main event for the Raw Women's Championship. As mentioned, SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch will defend against Charlotte Flair in a last women's standing match. Trish Stratus will now team up with Lita to take on their former one-on-one opponents, respectively, of Alexa Bliss and Mickie James. Excuse me, my throat's drying up. And NXT Women's Champion Kairi Sane will defend against Shayna Baszler. And many more matches are expected to be announced. I hope so, because if this is it for average 3-hour show, I'm pretty sure they'll push it to 4, but they got to really stack this card up. They really do. No word of how ticket sales have gone since, I would say, nearly a month ago now. Back then, they weren't doing so well. About maybe half were sold, so the arena may have to be reorganized if they don't sell at least closer to 10,000 seats, which would still be good. But we're talking about the Nassau Coliseum here out of Long Island, New York. They could fit up to at least 15,000, although after their renovations not too long ago, maybe less than that. But depending what kind of setting they want to go with, obviously it'll be the same one we've been seeing every time on television. But they have shown times where it could be compressed a little bit, maybe not as wide or maybe not as high. So again, it's all a matter of figuring out the numbers like that, and from where they stand right now with current ticket sales. But here's to hoping that it will perform well. I really would love to see this to become an annual thing, but it all depends how the card looks like. It really does. And speaking of, I left one highlight out here, and I'll get right into it. Bobby Lashley seems to have gone heel. Not sure because of fans were just getting tired to see what creative was going to come up with him, or the fact that they paired him with Leo Rush as a mouthpiece. But Leo Rush Leo Rush has become a bit of annoyance ever since, well, character-wise. I'm not saying that he is in real life, or maybe he is, I don't know. Ever since Leo Rush has become Bobby Lashley's mouthpiece, they gave him the, and I mentioned this last time too, what was his name? Abraham Franklin or whatever, the guy from ECW that made that Kobe Bryant comment and they got him in trouble. Well, Leo Rush is doing something like that where he's at ringside and has a live mic, so he'll chime in randomly with comments to annoy the opponent or just to hype up his, I guess in this case, his boy, Bobby Lashley. And you could clearly see and hear in the background the crowd in Chicago just wasn't having it. At one point during his match with Kevin Owens, Lashley did his, is it called the Dominator? I remember, I watch Raw on mute now, so. So Lashley performs his Dominator and gets the win over Kevin Owens. And when Lashley was standing upright and posing to celebrate, you could see guys in the background flipping him the bird, thumbs down, the whole 9 yards. And as Lashley was leaving, Leo Rush still on the microphone, antagonizing the crowd and saying, Lashley, how about you get back in there, give him some more? And this is where, for officially heel turn for Lashley, as he beat down Kevin Owens, dragged him to the corner, and basically smashed his leg against the ring post, or in this case, the LED board cover for the ring post now, I guess makes it safer. And just left Kevin Owens laying. And now the belief is this was meant to write off Kevin Owens off television for a while because he needs to have a minor knee surgery conducted. And there were conflicting reports as to what exactly happened or how long Lashley will be out. And there were, again, conflicting reports from many angles, from the Wrestling Observer, from John Pollock of Post Wrestling. But let's go with what John Pollock had to say, that Bobby Lashley's heelish attack on Kevin Owens was likely to give Owens some time off to get knee surgery. While the surgery is expected to be minor and Owens' length away from the ring is believed to be a short one, Pollock will later update and say that it's currently unknown at the extent of Owens' injuries. Initially, it was thought that Owens would be only out for a month or two with a routine scope in his knee. However, it now looks like the injury might be more serious than first believed, and a timetable with the current timetable means that Kevin Owens might miss out on WrestleMania and maybe suffering from an ACL tear. So that sucks. It's unfortunate. I would have loved to see. Although I'm still they'll still advertise and sell it on their shop zone, but I would have loved to see Kevin Owens' newest WrestleMania spin-off T-shirt, as he does every year going into WrestleMania. I believe he debuts it right after the Royal Rumble, so he'll be up to WrestleMania 4. Maybe he would have had the slot machine logo or something like that, and have all of his little headshots in the slot machine there. Who knows? But by the way, WWE, if you haven't gone with that idea yet and you heard it here and go with it anyway, I want my royalty check, or at least a finder's fee, whichever one is more expensive. Upcoming live events in the UK for NXT are as followed. On Saturday, October 13th, and on Sunday, October 14th at the Plymouth Pavilions. And on Saturday, November 24th and 25th, also Saturday and Sunday, at the Liverpool Olympia. And all shows will air on the WWE Network. So kudos on that. This is something that they should be doing more of. And this is a good right step in the right direction for international broadcasting on the network. Ryan Satin of the Pro Wrestling Sheet has a theory as to why Sasha Banks has been out of action and off television as of late, even though Sasha Banks has recently been advertised for live events upcoming in Portland, Oregon. However, Ryan Satin had the following to say on Twitter, that he has heard from a source inside WWE that Sasha Banks is dealing with a back injury. However, and this is to be stressed, He couldn't get additional information or confirmation from other sources, so this shouldn't be taken as an official report. As Satin would also indicate that he always makes sure that he has 2 or more sources for his story before publishing it. So that's fair to do. I believe that's on his part. Better safe than sorry. And hopefully Sasha Banks returns just in time for Evolution. Hollywood Reporter has, reported Dave Bautista is in talks to join the Fantasy Island film, which will serve as the movie adaptation from the 1977 through 1984 TV series. And he's also set, as I mentioned earlier, to return to WWE television next week to take part of SmackDown's 1000th episode. Also for the Evolution Stable reunion with Triple H, Ric Flair, and Randy Orton. Although a full-time return to professional wrestling seems unlikely given just how busy he is in Hollywood these days, which is true. I mean, they've had the opportunity before to have, but as a matter of fact, they did. Batista signed a 2-year deal, and that's long been expired previously to his first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, as been reported, and even Dave himself has conducted interviews explaining the situation ever since, that he felt or thought that with the WWE's help to advertise Guardians of the Galaxy, and he said Triple H, then it's like, well, Dave, we don't know how successful this movie is going to be, and if it's not successful, then what, and this and that. Well, how much money did the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie make? How much did the second one make? Even though the third one's in limbo right now, but, and I know I said this before, this came from a man allegedly, if it's to believe what Batista shared on the interview, that all of his movies went straight to Blu-rays and DVDs, Triple H, and how well were they successful? Unless you want to check the local Redbox and ask how many people had rented it out, or how many times you've seen it in a $5 box at a Best Buy. But anyway, it's kind of a douchey thing to say, more of a douchey thing to do. And shortly after WrestleMania 30, it became apparent to Batista that he just wasn't going to be happy. They didn't like the way things were done creatively, and just decided just to leave and quit on an episode of Raw and wave goodbye, and it was never seen since. But I would assume cooler heads have prevailed, which led to WWE inviting Dave Bautista to come back next week. Even if it's going to be a one-off, I'm very excited to see the big man back, especially in his hometown of Washington, D.C. next week. Hopefully, Hurricane Michael hasn't done too much damage in the area and they can still move forward with the show. And by the way, thoughts and prayers are with those victims that were in the path of Hurricane Michael. It's very unfortunate. We on the Tampa side, though we did get heavy rains and high winds, but nothing is close to what happened further north. And hopefully everything works out for everyone. Good luck to all those out there who are rebuilding, and best wishes. Tammy Cinch, remember her, former Sunny, has been released from prison. Yes, she's been in jail for the latter part of I'll say the entire summer, give or take a month or two, and released from the Carbon County Corrections Facility in Pennsylvania. And according to PW Insider, they're also confirming that Cinch was released, noting that she was arrested for several charges of contempt, disobedience, resistance, stemming from a number of DUI and alcohol-related incidents dating back to 2015, following an 8-month sentence. In that time, she has made her first public comments on Twitter about what is next for her, and she says that her life will be kept private from now on, which should have been, but sometimes things slip up or sometimes things get reported. It's only so much you can do about that. And also said, which will probably is for the best, and her fans can now expect new content from her coming soon from her OnlyFans.com account, which is WWEHOFER Sunny. Now, for those who don't know, OnlyFans.com has been used more so for adult content. Now, I'm not bashing Sunny for what she's doing nowadays compared to what she used to do during, after, with the wrestling business. That is her choice. And of course, it indicates because such said choices unfortunately led to consequences. And best example here would be that 8-month prison sentence. So I want to assume that she's paid her debt to society. Once again, hopefully she can get her stuff together and move forward with what she wants to do now and whatever mind changes she might have later on in life. But if I have to gripe, well, I wouldn't be me if I didn't have to have at least one little nitpick of a something to point out and bring to light here. Now, I don't have a OnlyFans.com account. I don't plan to have one anytime soon. And I really don't need one. But again, there's nothing wrong with what goes on there. People make their money. And at the end of the day, for the most part, that's what it comes down to. I mean, you got bills to pay. You want to fulfill a life or an accomplished dream. Sometimes it does, or maybe in most cases, it does cost money to get there. And people feel that they got to do what they have to. So my gripe is, does her account name have to have the WWE Hall of Fame initials in it? As if we won't know who she already is by Sunny, simply Sunny and Sunny Days or whatever. I mean, how many people won't get that reference? Or even simply Tammy Cinch or Tammy Sunny or Sunny Tammy, and anything but WWE. And that's like saying someone who may or may not be a disgruntled employee, say from Best Buy, you're not going to have him or her go on OnlyFans.com and say, you know, I'm the Best Buy guy here, and I'm going to use the same name for my account. Probably won't shine too many bright lights if you're a Best Buy manager or the CEO. Now, we've had this argument many a times, and up until now, there's been no change whatsoever as far as WWE may be sending out a cease and desist of their initials for said website. If anyone is to believe what the Stone Cold podcast with Triple H about some 11-year-old girl Googling China and finds what they find, you know, that's not inappropriate. That's not in the image of the WWE. Well, you got someone out there who is still a Hall of Famer in your website that wasn't fired or suspended for things that she's done in the past couple of years or so, but yet understandably suspend someone who did something similar only to have to say certain things he shouldn't have on the same tape, have him suspended for a couple of years, reinstate him, and now sponsor his upcoming reunion tour with the rest of his two sweet buddies is okay by using your initials in a mostly adult-oriented website where the fans or the public can pay for content. And Sunny, in this case, will perform nude acts, perform sexual acts, depending on what you tell her, depending on how much you pay. So I guess if they're okay with it, we know Sunny's okay with it, then who am I not to be okay with it either? Either that or just let it pass me by and just have the attitude of whatever. But either way, good to see Sunny back in society. Good to see her back in public. Well, not that I've seen her personally or somewhere in the park, you know, walking a dog or anything. I'm not sure if she even has one. But point being, she's out of jail, and hopefully we'll stay out of trouble and take our own advice of keeping her private life just that, private, among other things, where she doesn't draw too much attention and she'll be right back where she came from. WrestleVotes on Twitter, which has been proven to be correct on quite a few things as of late, including the recent Shawn Michaels reinstatement, well, coming out of retirement, really, is now saying that Shawn Michaels is all but confirmed to return and is now also in talks for a big match at WrestleMania 35, which will take place at MetLife Stadium. It makes sense to have Mr. WrestleMania get at least one more match at the grandest stage of them all. But it takes two to tango, and you have to wonder who would be Shawn Michaels' opponent. Again, this all comes from WrestleVotes on Twitter. Goes on to say there are plenty of people he would love to see face Shawn Michaels square off. One especially being AJ Styles. Now, this was teased, I believe, by AJ himself when the Royal Rumble was back in the Alamo Dome last year, I believe, 2017. But Michaels has said he wouldn't want to work against somebody who is much younger than he is. Perhaps a showdown with Triple H is in order, again. But after all, the idea of living in Shawn Michaels' shadow is still the bane, I should say, in Triple H's character and the character's existence. Maybe one more iconic match with The Undertaker, because third time will be the charm for Shawn Michaels, and Taker has lost enough matches already at Mania as it is. Perhaps he does shoot for one more modern-day opponent, such as Seth Rollins or maybe even AJ Styles. WrestleVotes believes that Shawn Michaels could even face Bray Wyatt, whose character will be a proper one and have a great angle with. Kind of like the dark versus the light thing again, similar to Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. But we'll see. I mean, either way, I will be very excited. Not only for the upcoming Crown Jewel event, but also, of course, the possible WrestleMania match at, in this case, WrestleMania 35 for Shawn Michaels against whomever his opponent would be. Maybe some seeds will be planted between Crown Jewel and, say, Survivor Series or maybe even Royal Rumble. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, it took us this long to get to this point, to have Shawn Michaels back to come into the ring. And we've been there before. What was it? 2002. Originally, it was supposed to be just a one-off at the at SummerSlam, the one-on-one match with Triple H, where he won only to get beaten the crap out of with a sledgehammer after the match, which led to the first ever Elimination Chamber match at Survivor Series that year. And then a short run with the World Heavyweight title. And then it just took off from there. He went on all the way to WrestleMania 26, where he had his career take on Undertaker's streak. He lost, had a great emotional send-off and retirement speech the next night on Raw with Undertaker tipping his hat to Shawn Michaels. I thought was a very nice gesture there. And made a few appearances on occasion on Raw. I don't think he's ever appeared on Smackdown. Definitely a few appearances at pay-per-view, but never a part-time position, which would be probably what they're going to go for. But I think if I'm a gambling person, which I'm not, I think they're going to see Dave being creative and Vince, for sure, see how he performs at Crown Jewel. It's one thing to see them practice or rehearse or get in shape in the Performance Center, which Shawn Michaels has been at the last few months. He and his family moved to Florida, moved in the Orlando area to be closer to the Performance Center, where Shawn is now a trainer and coach. Of course, he can shed off a few ring rust, if not more, if he hasn't already. And it looks like he could still go, bald head and all. He looks like he could still go. Looks like he could still bump around like nobody's business. That back surgery he had after WrestleMania 14, that's a long time ago. We're talking almost 20 years ago. Seemed to have been a very successful one, obviously, but meaning that it's held up. He hasn't been severely injured, thankfully. He hasn't been in any accidents, thankfully, that we know of that could have prevented him from even getting back into the ring as a manager, or so to speak, or let alone come back to a full-time retirement, out of retirement plan, and go against Undertaker and Kane. Now, these aren't just any ordinary guys we're talking about here. Kane and Taker, respectively, been around for more than 20 years, and 7-foot guys, through 300-plus pounds, give or take, teaming up with Triple H. I mean, I couldn't imagine what Shawn is feeling when all of this came to fruition, and only to finally get off his chest on live television this past Monday. He's got to be on cloud nine for sure. So, expecting a very exciting tag team match. More than likely, again, as I mentioned earlier, would be the main event for Crown Jewel while they're having their World Cup tournament to determine the best in the world. not the route I would have taken, but I would really like to know who would have these conversations specifically when it comes to like, well, who would you want to see participate? Who would you want to see be part of this? Better yet, who would you want to see this win? There's quite a few. It will be, well, it's already a miss. They're just having their own talent mingle within themselves to determine the best of the world, which logically does not make sense and unfair, but none of that exists in WWE, where you would have talents from around the world participate. Again, even if it was one-off, just one solid trip to Saudi Arabia, or even to have the qualifying matches on Raw and SmackDown. I mean, you beat them fair and square. I mean, there are still these freelancers out there, so to speak, in the independent circuit or arena that could have come in and done such a thing. I would understand, well, how can you just have them come in as successful as they are in the indies and around the world, have a one-off match on WWE television, they lose and they leave right after. I get that. I know how that will look like and seem, but have them qualify, the outside talent, make it to Crown Jewel, maybe have a surprise victory during the first round and make it to the quarterfinals and then get eliminated, which is more than likely expected. Also expected will be between two WWE guys, one Raw, one SmackDown guy in the finals. But to call it the World Cup, and I always thought as a kid that they should do such a thing. Only difference would have been is to have multiple promotions involved. And there have been several occasions, as history shown in pro wrestling, they've come close to it, but only to have egos get in the way and then money get in the way of who should go over, depending who it is, depending where they are, depending what region or territory they were in at the time. It will make sense to have the local town guy or hero to go over, or at least the heelish local town guy to get over, or whatever combination they were referring to at the time. But it sucks. It really does. The event hasn't even happened yet. And had it not been for the return of Shawn Michaels, I probably wouldn't have too much interest in it. But I think they saved it with this tag match. Out of curiosity, obviously, I'll watch the World Cup tournament as it goes on. Definitely going to watch the Shinsuke Nakamura and Rey Mysterio match upcoming on SmackDown this week. And, of course, curious to see who else they're going to ask to qualify. I believe it's going to be an 8-man tournament. So they have half the list so far. But they're still 3 weeks away from Crown Jewel. I mean, they still have Evolution, but Evolution happens and then the following week is already Crown Jewel. So they really have not that much time to spare here. So they got to get right into it. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening. Thank you for your support. If you have any comments, you know where to leave them. Any questions, you can reach out to me on social media. I'm all over the place, as you'll see in the description below. Like this video and subscribe. Let me know if there's any particular topics you want me to cover. But for now, I want to wish everyone a good weekend, to be safe and enjoy. Once again, my thoughts and prayers are with everyone who has suffered and we're going through hell right now after Hurricane Michael. I believe now it's a tropical storm a little further up north near Virginia, last I heard. So everyone be safe out there. Check on your neighbors. And until next time, it's good old JM signing off. And take care of yourselves.